Okay, so I'm going to feedback on the mock exams so far. So I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but I'm going to show you common things that people do that are pitfalls and how to avoid them. So we're feeding back on the mock paper 2, and we're going to feed back with some common sort of things that go wrong and things to look for. So get ready to learn some useful tips and tricks to help you get the most out of this experience. Okay, well, step 1, read the questions with care and underline all key words. We say it all the time, but it's amazing in the heat of the exam how people forget to underline the key words in the question. Many students, I've put several, but many have read and written about the wrong text, and some people do it in the real exam. They write about the wrong text and lose their marks. So remember that on paper 2 on Edexcel 2.0, you will always get 2 texts. On paper 2, question 1 and 2 are usually on text 1 and 3 and 4 on text 2. Questions 5 and 6 compare both texts, and if we don't do that comparison, we're not going to get the marks. And question 7/8 is a choice in your creative writing. That's section B. Some students even forget to do section B, but you know that's there, and it's about timing. So words have power, and that is step 2. It's thinking about question 2 and language. Don't forget that words have power, because when you're thinking about the language question, it's about what those words are doing to add to your experience. But the words aren't on their own. The words are in the context of that section of the story. So before you start answering, you must understand what that section of the extract is trying to get across to you. Some students aren't reading it and really understanding what's happening in order, and so they jump in with language analysis, spotting techniques, but what they're saying isn't really exploring anything that the words are doing in terms of the meaning. And so peel or peer your language in every paragraph. Be sure to know your language techniques, but the most important thing is that you quote from the text and then pick out a keyword to zoom in on and explore what that keyword is evoking for you. What ideas, what feelings does it connote? And so make sure you're really exploring those deeper ideas. Make sure you've understood the extract before you start your answer, because you need to consider that language use in the context of the answer. Remember that PEEL stands for point, evidence, explain and link back to the question. PEER stands for point, evidence and explore in relation to the reader and the effect it has on you as a reader. So, and some people do PEED, which is develop. All of those are things that you need to do to be successful on this question. On question 3, this is the 1 mark question, don't just quote. So question 3 is one of those fact-finding questions, but here on question 3, it's more than just finding a fact, it's inferring in your own words. So remember not to just quote, but we need to make an inference in your own words. You could still possibly use a bit of a quote, but make sure you do some little inference there to show you are answering the actual question you've been asked. Step 4 is to think about question 4, and many people have only commented on language or structure. Please be sure that you explain, explore, or for the most marks, analyse why that particular device has been used for structure as well as language. You have to explore, and one way of remembering that for structure is WWE. What is it? Why has it been used? What is the effect? Just saying character or setting doesn't tick the box for I'm exploring structure. You have to explore the structure sort of overall in terms of the effect that it has. So just picking character or setting at the beginning and saying nothing more about structure isn't going to get you those marks. For example, if you're talking about character, then you need to say what the writer's doing at that particular moment in terms of shaping the story. If you're going to talk about a long multi-clause sentence, you need to say why that's been used. You need to say the effect it's deliberately having at that moment in the story. What's its purpose? If it's a short impact sentence, why? If it's first person narration, don't just tell us first person narration, but how does it being first person narration add to your experience of that character's experience in the story? So language and structure, we're analysing language and we're exploring the structure, the shape of the story from the beginning to the middle through to the end. And we come to question 5, and this is the one I always say is a time drain. Many people spend far too long on this question, and most people end up then getting capped at 2 out of 6 marks. Why? Well, number 1 is this is similarities only. You need to find 3 sets of similarity. Each pair of similarities has to include a quote from each text and explain what is similar. Some people have done that, but explained the differences rather than the similarities. That's not what we're looking for. Some people have managed 2 sets of similarities, but not quite a third one. Each time that means that you're limited to 2 out of 6 marks. And so it's really important to be careful on this one, but not to let it drain your time. 2 out of 6 marks is not worth it if it means losing out on the 10 marks for question, the 16 marks for question 6, okay? On question 6, one of the really common things people are doing is either running out of time, panicking and leaving it blank. You can't do that, it's worth 16 marks. So one of the common things people are doing is leaving it blank. That's the first thing not to do. The second thing that people are forgetting to do, they're finding some lovely comparison between the sort of what the writer is showing, but they're either forgetting to say how that shows their viewpoint on the topic, how they feel about the topic, the mood they are presenting on the topic, or they're forgetting to show how the writer presents their ideas. So forgetting to talk about language or structure in how the writer has presented it. For example, is it first person or third person? And how does that change how we understand their feeling on the topic, or does it? What are the things they do in how they put this together that helps to shape how we understand their viewpoint is on that topic? So it's a little more complex than the other ones, and it's really easy to get carried away. You want a balance of comparisons, and you want to do a range. So just talking about one thing on each text isn't really going to climb the mark scheme. You want a variety, ideally for most marks, but within that you must talk about language or structure. Now remember, you've already talked about language on question 2 and structure on question 4, so you should have some good ideas that you could already draw on. And finally we get to writing. Now the key here is to write in paragraphs. We know we say this all the time, and yet in the heat of the moment people forget. Many people so far have forgotten to write their story in paragraphs. Now this could potentially limit you to 4 out of 24 marks for content, because showing that you are structuring is part of how you put the content together when it asks for good structure. Remember to leave 1 line to show a change in paragraph. And tip-top stands for time, person, topic or place. Every time you change focus, the time changes, the person or the character changes, the person talking changes, the topic changes, the place changes. We need to leave a line and start a new paragraph. Please show the examiner that you're using structure creatively. So what about, rather than having all your paragraphs the same length, having maybe one that builds up to something important and then suddenly a short impact sentence on its own? So think about how your structure can impact the feeling of the person reading, and that will get you loads more marks. Nearly finished. Step 8 is proofreading. Several people have stopped before the end of the exam, and I don't think as a teacher there is anything more frustrating than seeing people stop and put their pens down. You never finish in time in GCSE English, and if you think you have, then you probably haven't proofread your work. What you need to do at this step is to proofread for things like, have I put a comma where a full stop should go? Or is there somewhere where instead of a full stop I could have used a semicolon to show 2 closely related ideas? So this is the point that you check that you've got that variety of punctuation. If you've used ellipsis to show missing words, have you used only 3 dots rather than 5? It's only ever 3 dots. Have you changed tense? And this is something that nearly everyone has done. Have you changed tense in the middle of a paragraph? If your first line is written in the past tense, if the line you were given to start with is written in the past tense, you can't suddenly change to present tense. It doesn't make sense. And so you need to check your verbs. And that's something that you can do by going through and looking for each of your verbs. Is it in the correct tense? Do I need to change it? A very, very common mistake is people are using can. I can do this in the past. Well, that isn't past tense, we're jumping into the present. So if it's past tense, it would be I could do this. If it's past tense of I will, you would say I would do this, I would make it. So please do check to make sure that it's making sense, your verbs are agreeing with the tense that you are in and your subject verbs agree. And I've got a whole other video on subject verb agreement if you need to go into that in more detail. Now remember, we're on a journey. Mock exams are the ideal place to make mistakes, and it's by doing it that we realise the kind of common mistakes we make individually, and by getting feedback and being on a constant journey of progress, we learn and we grow and we develop and we get better and better each time. So very, very best of luck with your next one, and I'm looking forward to feeding back.